Who's writing your stuff? Good
You're
evening.
right, I apologize, that was below par.
Good evening. I'll call this meeting of the Stow Board of Selectmen to order. Today is Tuesday, August 13th. And we will begin, as always, with public input on any matters not on our agenda. Anybody? All right, the usual rush to the microphone. But yes, Mr. Martin.
Have we selected a new superintendent of streets?
No.
Not yet. Well, actually, later on our agenda is appointing an acting, which is the current deputy.
We're in the process already.
And then we're in the process of picking a permanent one.
I personally endorse Brian Hatch. I think he'll do an excellent job.
Did Brian pay you?
Little, not much.
$1 goes a long way with primaries.
Thank you for that. Chairman's comments. First of all, best wishes to go from the board to Bob Glorioso. He's the chair of LACAC and also a very big figure at our airport, an all-around great guy. He's recovering from some surgery. I also want to comment on, we're missing a couple of selectmen, Mr. Hawks and Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan is also recovering from surgery, and I want to remark on the birth of his first grandchild, a granddaughter named Sophie. I believe that's her name, but congratulations from the board to Tom and Deb and the whole family. This Thursday, August 15th at 6 o'clock, there'll be a meeting at Pompo on the 25th percent design of the Gleasondale Road Bridge. There was a prior meeting on this, I think, as the project got started, very well attended, very informative. Certainly if you're from the Gleasondale area, this is something you ought to be interested in. If you're from town and you've suffered through with that bridge being in the condition that it's been in since 2015, I think, this is something worth spending an hour on. Mr. Burke.
Just briefly, Maureen, do we have an email list of people down there? That,
Well, my one contact moves, so sometimes I send things to Bill Byron.
Oh, wow. You're on the spot. Let everybody know.
So I think that is it for Chairman's comments. We have one set of minutes from, I think, July 23rd. Thank you, Maureen. Bill, did you pass my comment?
Yes, I shared with Maureen and I
Okay.
suggested corrections.
I had one edit to the paragraph on town administrator's search. Mr. Wrigley was kind enough to suggest some language. Do you happen to have that edit available, Maureen?
Did you send it to me?
I think Bill did.
Oh, I had Bill's, yeah. I changed it simply, well, I did change the paragraph. Kept it the same. The town moderator, David Walrath, was present for the discussion. Maybe I didn't make it. I didn't print the change. It's on my computer.
What is the board's pleasure? Does the board want to vote these now or wait until you can actually see that language?
What is the language? I mean, can you just read it, or?
I found the language that was in our minutes to be unclear, and the new language, actually, wait a minute, the miracles of technology. The selectmen agreed that the town administrator would create a working group consisting of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, the moderator, and the town administrator, to discuss how the group might assist the full Board of Selectmen and moderator in appointing the 5-member search committee.
I can live with that.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yes,
One
Mr. Burke.
more suggested revision before I'll move the minutes. On page 2, appointment to Council on Aging. When you say, Mr. O'Brien was recommended by the board to fill the vacancy, and if you could add the following language, I don't think it's that complicated.
Sure.
And the only other applicant had withdrawn
Okay.
his
Candace.
candidacy for a full membership.
Good suggestion. Courtney, you have anything?
I gave Maureen 2 non-substantive,
Okay.
correct, grammar.
With that, do I have a motion on the minutes of July 23rd as edited, as amended?
At the chair's pleasure, I move to accept the meeting minutes of July 23rd, 2019 Board of Selectmen meeting as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of the July 23rd meeting as amended. Further discussion? Seeing, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the minutes are approved. Thank you, Maureen.
Sure.
All right, correspondence. Has everybody had a chance, everyone who's here had a chance to take a look at correspondence? Anything suggested for some future agendas?
There's something I might mention when it comes to liaison reports, but nothing.
Good, okay. That brings us to our first substantive thing of the night, which is the proposed one-day liquor licenses for several weekends in the late summer, fall for a Honey Pot Hill Orchard. I think we have Chelsea and Andrew Martin with us. Do you want to join us at the table? Thanks.
Hi. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Oh, we did, we should.
Hey,
Okay,
Chelsea.
cool.
Brian.
Nice to meet you. Hi, Chelsea.
Courtney.
So thank you for coming in. We now have
us.
We now have a pile of documents, and you've spoken to our public safety reps and
Yeah.
and I think the building inspector. Do you want to summarize for us and for people who are watching what you're trying to do?
We're on TV.
You are on TV, I know, it makes people nervous.
So, we are trying to get one-day liquor licenses for this season. Our thought is hopefully, going forward, we will apply for a permanent liquor license. We're not trying to do this every season, but we're trying to get a feel to see if it fits with our business model. If we wanted to do something more permanent going forward, but we wanted to try to see if it works, maybe we get to the end of the season and decide it's not good for us, it doesn't fit, it's a waste of our time. So we wanted to go through the one-day licenses opposed to the full license, because we wanted to see how it went. So we have an area in mind. We talked to
One thing
Yeah.
you mentioned is that our intention is to do hard cider.
Oh, yeah, just hard cider. Yeah, we're not doing anything else. And we're working with Pony Shack Cider in Boxborough. We've been talking to him since January. He was a recommendation to us. He does really good work and uses local stuff. So we're hoping to use our cider, which would be fun. We have one spot in mind. We talked to the police and fire. It's going to be out of a tent. The plan is to have, I don't know if any of you have been to Treehouse Brewing Company, but I think their setup is extremely smart, so I'm copying it. When you come into the area, we plan on having it fenced along the pond. There's a pond, and then double roped along the outside.
Pen doesn't work real well.
It doesn't, mine doesn't work, so yours is better than mine. I'm just trying to give you a locus on your map of what we have here.
When people come up, we plan to bottleneck them and have either one or two people checking IDs. We're going to buy scanners to make sure that everything's above board. They can buy either one or two drinks. They will receive drink tickets for their drinks when they come in. They'll go to the bar. The bartender's not dealing with IDs. They're not dealing with cash. They're either giving that person one or two drinks. If you get a drink, you get a little mark on your hand, so you can't give all the drink tickets to one person and have someone leave 10 drinks later. So it's a maximum of 2 drinks per person, and we are trying to mitigate liability as much as possible. We're a family place. We're not trying to be a bar. We're trying to have something else that we can do with our apples that we think will bring in. I'm 27, so we're trying to target, men who want to watch the Patriots game and my age group. So we're trying to diversify a little bit, and I think it will be fun, hopefully.
Okay, and you've met with our police department
Yeah.
and fire department, I think the 2 chiefs
Yeah.
met with you. And they've
Oh,
said.
it was Solis, not the, but, yeah.
It's signed by him.
Yeah.
And they've suggested, the police suggested 9 conditions. The servers are all going to be tip certified, right?
Yep.
IDs checked prior to entering the area, 2 drink maximum, as you said. The building inspector, the fire chief all had 6 conditions, but some of those overlap with the fire department, with the police department. The building inspector had a few conditions, which I think are what you would expect from the building department, possible exception of the flame retardant tent, which seems like a good idea. Are these conditions acceptable?
Yeah, I mean, everything that they said was stuff that we were already planning on doing, so
Okay.
it was no surprise from us. We're pretty, some of those stipulations were my idea.
Okay.
I think most of them.
Yeah, so,
Maureen, did you type these up on one sheet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we have that?
Yep, and I have extra.
Thank you. So, has everyone on the board had a chance to review this?
Yes.
You had a chance to review this.
I actually have not.
Or extrapolated from what you had seen from the
Yes,
public safety.
I'm sure.
yeah,
And I will tell you that, I mean, certainly speaking for myself, if public safety says this is what's required, as far as I'm concerned, this is what's required.
yeah.
Yeah.
While they're reading, questions from members of the board? Mr. Burke?
I reviewed the materials, and the conditions and stipulations imposed by public safety are sensible
Yeah.
and in accordance with good, prudent conduct of such an activity. I have one question for you on that, but I also, I want to do two things. First, point out that the building inspector, Mr. Martin, whom you know, was also consulted about the erection of the tent, and he's signed off on the plans for that. Am I correct, Mr. Martin?
That's correct. In full disclosure, as everyone knows, I am a relative, Andrew's my cousin. But yes, I did look at the size of the tent. It's an open-sided tent. Chelsea is going to give me the layout of the size of the bar,
Yeah.
and where she wants to put the picnic benches and so forth, and I will calculate a maximum occupancy, and then that'll be posted, and it'll be the maximum number of people they can allow in the tent, and they're going to monitor that as part of their plan.
So the second thing I wanted to do was thank all the public safety officials and the building inspector. We're working with one of our local businesses to try and set something up like this. We're trying to encourage business activities. It's also worth noting that for most of the weekends that you've got these permits scheduled, that there'll be police officers directing
Already
traffic
there, yeah.
very close by.
Yeah.
So that's also good to know. Just one aside, if it doesn't work out, you don't have to use all the liquor permits. You can stop halfway through, but we're hoping that it'll be a lot of great luck and it'll work out for everyone. One last thing though is, it's kind of tough when people come in, first of all, trying to figure out who under 21 is being accompanied by a parent or guardian.
Well, we have a lot of families, and from the places that I've been that are outdoor, a lot of families will come with their young kids. And like, if you're at the farm picking apples and you want to have one drink and there's games, you can't leave your 5-year-old at the front.
Oh,
So we just wanted to make sure that like people could bring their kids in if they wanted to.
No, that makes perfect sense, and what I was just about to say, is I'm not trying to add to any of
Oh, yeah.
the regulations or the permit conditions that have already been applied to, but if somebody comes in between, like my son's age, with their parent or guardian, are you going to have, you might want to think about, and as I said, I'm not adding anything, I'm just giving this to your consideration, some band or maybe mark their hands if they're not above the age of 21. But it's for you to consider.
Yeah, I know, I don't want teenagers in there. We were actually talking about that. That's why we put that stipulation in there, because I was talking to Officer Solis, and I was like, I don't know how to deal with this, because we do have a lot of 14, 15, if we have groups that come that are mixed, 21, if they're with a group of friends and they're 20, they can't come in. It's, if they're with their parents and they're 18, you can't stop them, because their parents can technically serve them alcohol in the state of Massachusetts. If they buy it and give it to their kid, you can't stop them.
Can they?
Yeah.
Apparently, this is news to me
This
too.
was what the police told me. I had
Okay.
an idea of this. I don't like that. I'm not really sure how to stop that, so if anyone has a great idea.
Well, that's one idea.
Yeah, we
right
can
there.
give them wristbands.
I'm sorry for mentioning
No,
it,
no,
Dennis, but
no.
it sounds like you've already considered this.
It's a good idea.
But in addition to wishing you good luck again, I'll just say, bounce my son out of there if he ever shows up.
Gotcha.
Let's hope that kind of thing is rare. Courtney, do you have any questions or concerns?
No, just a thought about the weekend, which overlaps events at the Collings Institute Museum, but I imagine that because their entrance is now from Hudson, that much of
Yeah.
that's been alleviated.
Yes, it's hard to determine exactly how much better the traffic situation is because we've only had 1 year
Yeah.
since that's gone into play. And last year wasn't ideal weekend weather, over that weekend particularly, so time will tell. But that certainly, they're coming a totally different route now from where they were before. And I hadn't seen this list before, but everything I was on there I was aware of.
Okay.
Very fun.
Mr. Chair?
It's a good
Is that
list.
it? Well,
Yeah,
I
it's a
had
good
some-
list.
Okay.
So I had some concerns when this first came in, and I want to share them with you, but I've gotten over them, for the most part at least. But I want to talk to you about them briefly. I had three main concerns. Number one, when a Board of Selectmen issues a one-day liquor license, they can either issue it to a for-profit entity or a non-profit entity. You're a for-profit entity.
Oh, we try.
Right. I hope with the traffic you get, I hope you're making some money. And when you issue it to a for-profit entity, you can only issue licenses for wine and beer. And my initial reaction was that knocks you out of the box for this, but come to my surprise, it's right in the law that hard cider is wine. So for anybody who's watching at home who has to know these rules, that's how they get around that. Second was, frankly, I assumed the reaction of public safety was going to be something along the lines of, are you kidding? Adding alcohol to
They
that
were
situation?
so chill. It was awesome.
And-
Everything was the same as what I thought, to be safe, you know?
And if that's their reaction, then that's my reaction. And, you know, I will admit it surprised me a little bit, but there's certainly reasonable conditions. I would think most of them are stuff you probably intended to do anyway, just to play it safe and for your own liability. But if public safety is good with it, then I'm good with it. I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I think, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I was trying to be extremely prepared, and we're trying to be really conservative.
Right.
And I think that went like a pretty long way with them, because I made it really clear from the start that like, we're not trying to overdo this at all the first time around, especially because we
Right.
don't want to make the town upset. You know, we're trying to do this reasonably.
You're trying to try it out.
Right.
So that gets to my third concern, which I've gotten over, but I just want to share it with you. A series of one-day liquor licenses, a Board of Selectmen can issue a series of one-day liquor licenses, up to 30, I think, in a year, but it kind of bumps up conceptually with a seasonal license from the ABCC. What's the difference between what you're doing and a seasonal license from the ABCC? Well, I spoke to the ABCC, and they're like, well, kind of nothing, but you can do it anyway. So all I wanted to say is, I understand why you're doing it this way for the first year. A seasonal license with the ABCC, I'm assuming is a little bit expensive, time-consuming,
The
difficult.
time-consuming was the
Right, and you
worry.
probably had to start thinking about this in February, and if you didn't start doing something about it in February, you weren't going to get. I get it. For the first year, when you're just trying it out, this makes perfect sense. Speaking only for myself, though, you are a for-profit business, so that if this works out, and I certainly hope it does, and you want to do it next year, I'm not going to be inclined to do it this way again next year.
That's not our plan. So our plan is October 30th to get on either a seasonal or a permanent liquor license, if it works out.
If it works out.
And do it again. But we don't know, and we didn't want to commit to that, because once you go for the seasonal license, you can't apply for one-day permits. Because once you're in the process of applying for a real license, you're not allowed to apply for one-day permits anymore. And from what I've heard, it takes up to 6 months, and we're like, you take a huge risk, you get it in November, and then it's no good for us, and you're paying several $1,000s for something you can't even use.
Okay.
So that was my thought process. I know you understand all of that now. I was just trying to make sure that we got something through to try it, and that way it wasn't,
I
you know.
think we're on the same page then.
Yeah.
And, you know, I
We
can
get it, you don't want to see us again.
hardly.
Be happy to see you again for another purpose.
But, you know, I think this makes sense doing it this way for your trial year, and with public safety's pass and building inspector's pass, I personally am good with it, and I'm ready for a motion. Mr. Burke.
Mr. Chair, or you've been giving them to the
Ms.
clerk, but I'm ready.
Mr. Chair, I move to
I know
approve
you-
and sign special one-day liquor licenses for Honey Pot Hill Orchard for the following dates: August 24th and 25th for a Blueberry Festival, August 31st to September 1st for a Blueberry Festival rain date, September 14th and 15th, September 21st and 22nd, September 28th and 29th, October 5th and 6th, October 12th and 14th, October 19th and 20th.
Second, assuming a friendly amendment, that the applicant complies with all the conditions and that have been set out by public safety.
There's actually a little codicil for that list. Chelsea Martin of Honey Pot Hill Orchard has indicated that the orchard is asking permission for several special licenses during the fall apple picking season, but does not expect to utilize them on weekends when weather is poor and attendance at the orchard is low. Public safety has thoroughly investigated and has made recommendations.
So I think what I understand is that your motion is as you read it, and then with the addition, subject to the conditions, the 17 conditions set forth on a list, prepared at this date.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the difference between a lawyer and a carpenter.
Okay. Motion made and seconded to approve the series of one-day liquor licenses with the conditions set forth. Further discussion, and I didn't do something I had intended to. Is there anybody here who wanted to speak on this in the audience? Nope. Any further discussion from the board? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Best of luck to you. We'll all be pulling for you.
Yep.
Do we have those to sign? You can hang around for those, and you can wait to see the Brian Hatch appointment vote, at least.
We're considering, because it's getting a little bit late for a Blueberry Festival, doing like a soft open for Stow residents to win some favor, maybe.
These are permits, you don't have to use them.
I know.
Just a little background is interesting. One of the reasons, another reason why we've done the temporaries, is, again, we said how you never know how it's gonna go.
Right.
2 years ago, we had Patriots games on every Sunday during the fall.
do
I remember that.
Do again.
Yeah.
So we thought, hey, we'll put up a tent, a big screen TV and everything so people can watch. This is an utter flop.
Really?
Very few people were interested in it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, they came to pick apples and do the outdoor thing
I was
and.
gonna say, I think most people, you're doing one or the other. You're either watching the game or you're going picking apples for a few hours with the family.
So you just never know for sure about things, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
We were trying to accommodate those people that wanted to see the game still, and it wasn't really an issue at all.
I was thoughtful, but
But you're gonna put the big screen in the
I'll probably try again.
beverage tent?
Yeah, see if
Now that we own it.
Yeah.
people don't come to an orchard expecting to see that. You'd have to advertise that. It'd be a great way to get some people out of their house if they do that.
But the other issue is then you're sitting for the entire game in that tent, not buying any, well, they might buy stuff now, but not buying anything.
I agree. If you're gonna go apple picking,
Patriots fan is simply providing the money and the transportation to the rest of the family and saying, we'll see you later.
Well, there is some of that there for sure.
Yeah.
I can tell you, and you couldn't coax me to go to an apple during the Patriots game just because they had it out in the field.
It's a nice venue.
No, look, that's what makes.
Your seat at home is probably more
What makes
comfortable.
America great, ideas, notions, image making. Some work, some don't. Keep trying.
This was my idea, so I really hope it works.
Good luck, no insurance.
Oh, yeah, no, we know.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
I don't know if we-
appreciate it.
Yeah, okay.
Nice
Cool.
meeting you.
More nice to meet you too.
Thank you. All right, our next item, let's take up the appointment of the acting superintendent of streets. Mr. Wrigley, do you want to speak to this? This is pretty pro forma at this point.
Basically expound a bit on what we've been talking about for several weeks, which is, I think it's in our best interest to have an acting superintendent. For a period of time, we go through evaluative process and hiring a successor. Brian Hatch is a logical choice. He's the assistant superintendent and will be interested in competing for the superintendent's job. He's accepted this position. He's been acting superintendent absent the actual appointment. So for me, this is a straightforward, logical vote. You are the appointing authority here in this case, and like other cases where I could have made it. So this is a charter requirement that you actually make any appointment to the.
With Mr. Ryan being under the weather, has that affected the schedule for your working group for the permanent position?
Because he's got, in my last conversation with Tom, actually, after the email exchange, I actually called him today, he's going to be at the next meeting. I don't expect that we're going to be, the posting's gone out, the posting to advertising, the MMA Beacon, the basically in-industry job board, which went out today. But the MMA Beacon is not published until the 28th of August, given till the 20th of September for the return. So Tom's gonna be back in the saddle and,
Okay,
for several weeks, there won't be any.
okay, very good. Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, just a quick question beforehand, Mr. Chair. As I understand it, Brian Hatch is the only one who applied for the acting position.
As I've stated before, this is a process of keeping the peace with regard to process.
Oh, no.
And there would be no other applicants, because he's the presumptive.
Okay.
Same with the police, the assistant, in this case, it's assistant superintendent. The reason we've done all of this is because we believe in promoting from within, and that's the logical progression.
But the position was posted, he was the only applicant, right?
Because no one's gonna,
Yeah, I know,
yes, he was the
I'm
only
just stating
applicant.
for the record, Mr. Town
You're
Administrator.
stating the self-obvious, yes, he's the only one that applied.
Sometimes that's necessary, but I apologize for taking
That's
too
all
much
right.
time on this.
Thank you.
Then we can leave it to the clerk, or I'm ready to move.
Go ahead, make a motion.
I move
Oh.
to appoint Brian Hatch as acting superintendent of streets for the Stow Highway Department until a permanent superintendent can be appointed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Brian Hatch as acting superintendent of streets for the highway department. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Town planner's just joining us, thanks to the miracles of texting, and we are taking up another lower village easement extension. Thank you for being here, Jesse. I just wanted you to be here in case there are any questions.
Sure.
So this is yet another, I believe, construction easement, correct?
That's right.
So made necessary to facilitate the construction project in Lower Village that town meeting approved. I believe it's in the same form as the others that we've seen, right?
The others that we've seen this year, yes. Yeah, it's a right of entry agreement, yeah.
Is there anything different about it? Other than
No, I
landowner?
mean, items 1 through 5 are different for each property owner based on the types of construction that's going to take place, but other than that, no.
Okay. Questions from members of the board?
Is this the last easement? Or are these- I understand we got another one.
I think we'll see 2 more at the next meeting. They were just delivered to me today, so I didn't have them quite in time, so I think those are the last ones.
I was reluctant to put any more on the agenda. Really, they should be on the agenda with an address,
Okay,
and I don't just like popping them on,
that's fair.
so. All right, any questions from members of the board? So I already asked that.
Courtney, take it.
Do we have a motion? If you
I
haven't
move to
picked up on
approve
it,
and-
the chair's a little under the weather tonight, so, anyway, go ahead, sorry.
I move to approve and sign an easement agreement extension for 92 Great Road, map number R29, parcel 83, owned by the Presti Family Limited Partnership, as presented by the planning board.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve and sign an easement agreement extension for 92 Great Road, as specified. I assume this is to authorize the chair to sign, not the entire board. 'cause
That would be the
there's only-
intent of my motion.
Yes, so it's authorize the chair to sign and have his signature notarized. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay, and that is Don, let's take care of this right now. Linda, do you,
Is that the only one you had?
is this the only one we have?
Yep.
Can I just sign it?
Yep.
Okay.
You're acknowledging that you're signing this under your capacity as chairman and under your own free will?
Yes.
All right. And then if you take it back, I'll sign off on the rest of it. And Jim, since I have your signature already in my ledger book, I'll just reference a page and number.
Okay.
So I don't need a signature in my book.
Thank you. Give this to Maureen?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I'll follow up with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, now, the town clerk has something to share with us. Linda, how are you?
Good. So I have the original here, that one. And this is a copy of what? That's a copy.
Thank you.
So, last week I learned that when I called the Ethics Commission that I needed to provide a disclosure to my appointing authority, which is you. And this is related, first, the call was about an abutting property to where I live, and it was at 28 South Acton Road. They're seeking a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals for a commercial kennel. And my call was to find out whether, what I needed to do, because I lived across the street and I had livestock, and I was concerned about the livestock, the dogs getting out and chasing livestock. And so, in my discussion with the attorney of the day at elections, we also talked about, well, I don't just have, when I'm doing dog licensing in the clerk's office, I don't just have dogs and kennels at that address, I have them all around abutting me. You know, Crescent Street, West Acton Road, and South Acton Road. So I've asked for you to just take into consideration all matters related to dogs in Stow, because, you know, they wander and people walk and they could get out. Those are the two things. So this describes some of the tasks that I do. And issuing dog license and kennel license are primarily administrative. You know, the general laws and the general bylaws allow us to issue the licenses, kennel licenses, and we do it annually. And we share the duties with I share the duties with the assistant town clerk. Both of us do that at different times. We collect the licensing fees, we issue the license, we follow up with dog owners if they're missing information, we send out letters to the dog owners if they fail to license, just reminding them to do that. And then we discuss both verbally and written steps for getting a kennel license. And there's different forms and things, and information that we collect. And if they're running it as a business, they're instructed about getting a commercial kennel license. And so if they do have to get a commercial kennel license through the ZBA, we're signing the documents, recording the documents, and issuing a statement of no appeal if there is no appeal, or if there is appeal, those things occur as well. So also, if they're running a business, whether they be they might have their own personal dogs, and it's not a kennel, and then they do a dog walking business or a pet sitting business, but they do it at their clients' homes, they don't do it at their own, they would get a business certificate. So that's another piece that's, implied in there. We interact with animal control, and the animal control officer is also the animal inspector. And they inspect our barns, and they do a census count in January. And so the actual financial piece is because I own the livestock, and if they get injured or killed, I can seek compensation from the dog owner for damages. And my son, an immediate family member, owns the horse that's there. And my uncle, he's not considered an immediate family member, but because I live at the house and benefit from any of the sale of the lamb meat or hay, I included his information here as well. And then it gives a list of the current animals that are at the property, and these figures are based on basically if we were to replace them. I didn't actually do up a whole total, and this number varies. So this week I have 4 market hogs. The 1st of September, I only have 2 hogs, 4 will go to market. So that number fluctuates. Same with the lambs. They all start going to market in September and go to, the last one will be in late November. So that number fluctuates. So the financial impact is going to be different at different times of the year and year to year. And what I have done is I've never thought of how that there was a financial impact, because I'm more concerned about the coyotes killing my dogs than neighbor's dog. The last dog incident at the farm was like late 70s, early 80s, when neighbor's dog did attack the sheep, and there was injuries. So it didn't even dawn on me that this was a financial for all dogs, because there's about 30 dogs that abut the property. And there's at least another dog sitting business, just she goes to her clients' homes, she doesn't have them in her house, and she does dog walking. So, she's across the street, and she gets a business certificate because she's doing a business ads. So I'm doing the formality thing, trying to do everything as they tell me. Like I said, I figured there was something because there was an abutter in the special permit, but was surprised when I heard that I needed to do the others, because any dogs could walking or whatever.
Let me summarize for myself mainly, but as I said to you privately, I've called the Ethics Commission on several occasions, and I always hear something that surprises me. The Ethics Commission has taken the position that you have a financial conflict due to 2 things. Number 1, the fact that you issue dog licenses and kennel licenses all over town to anybody who owns a dog or has a business keeping a dog. And number 2, in particular with regard to an abutting property that's seeking a commercial kennel special permit from the ZBA. And you've spoken at those hearings and taken a public position on that, and you are.
I did.
Which is your right, which is your absolute right.
I do have a right. As the owner of the livestock that pertain to me, I didn't address my son or my uncle's stuff.
That's fine.
Just mine, which is allowed.
Here's what and what this board is being asked to do is to make a written determination that the interest, meaning the financial interest, is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the municipality may expect from employees. So I just want to say, speak for myself, I don't really have any problem making that finding. In particular, I don't have any problem making that finding with regard to the first alleged conflict, which seems so, I'm sorry, the only word that comes to mind is ephemeral and theoretical, that the licensing of any dog in town jeopardizes your financial interest. And even with regard to abutting dogs, where there isn't any pending public issue, it seems also very theoretical, and I can't imagine, I don't have any doubt of the integrity of the services will. I do think there's a legitimate concern that we've discussed about the specific abutting property that has sought the commercial special permit. And what we should do is we should put in place some very common sense and very common structures to minimize or eliminate any potential conflict. I mean, after all, you could theoretically appeal a decision, so we have to be careful of that, theoretically. So what I'm going to suggest is that, and this is subject to my colleagues, obviously, but I'm going to, my position.
I can't appeal that decision because I'm not the property owner.
Oh, okay, but a family member could. I'm going to suggest that we make this waiver, but with the condition that with regard to any licenses pertaining to the abutting property, that for that purpose only, the assistant town clerk is considered the town clerk. The hierarchy ends there. She reports to us, to the same extent you report to us in anything else on that particular matter. And that we just put in some pro forma thing about, reminding you that you can't use town resources, town time, town personnel to further a personal interest, the usual stuff. But with those conditions, I don't really have a problem with this. This strikes me as largely theoretical.
So are you suggesting just for that particular property? I mean, because another property may come up another time that's abutting, and so then I would come back for that particular property?
That's what I think. I
Okay.
mean, again, just speaking for myself, right, other neighbors of yours may have dogs, but that still falls with me in the theoretical, I don't have any doubt about the integrity of the services. Where there is a public proceeding and you've spoken on it, I think we need to do something like this, which, by the way, is done in organizations all the time.
So I'm just thinking if there's another special permit coming up, then we would just, if something else comes up with a special permit, then that would be.
I think you would amend this
Okay,
and come back to us, and we would
Okay.
add the same conditions
Okay.
on that.
okay. So I'm just kind of
Yeah,
talking a little bit out loud about this, because there's only the two of us. And sometimes the filings come in and Deb's not there. And so I'm just
I
trying to.
don't think it means you can't touch the document.
No, but
You would set it
I
aside
can
for it.
date stamp it
Yeah.
in, but if the decision comes down or on a particular day, and, because I've had decisions, not this particular, but a decision where they just had a couple of days before the deadline, and it had to be signed before the deadline.
You would have to get her into the office to do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So,
It'll work.
I gave you the example of, at my old job, the former general counsel was elevated to executive director, but she was married to another manager. Now, all of a sudden, she's responsible for his performance reviews. So we had to do a very similar thing, which
Okay.
is cut her out of the chain of command
Right,
with regard to him. It ended at the deputy director.
okay.
So it's, as I said, it's done all the time. Mr. Burke, I was getting the vibe that you wanted to say something.
Look, for the record, I disagree with the counsel that you got from the staff attorney for the Ethics Committee. I don't think this meets the definition of financial interest, either under statute, regulation, or guidelines. I'm sorry you had to be put to all this. I think we spent too much time on this already. But the chair is always got good counsel and good advice. I'm going to follow in this, but I'm sorry you had to be put to all of this. I think we should just try and put this behind us, and I'm happy to vote for acceptance by the chair of the disclosure.
Courtney?
I commend you for your regular diligence in following the law and paying attention to detail. And I slightly disagree with Mr. Burke. I think this is great to make a public disclosure and keep everything clear so there's no doubt for anyone.
Right. And sometimes the disclosures are enough that it's here and it's written and I put it out here and
You don't have to worry
it is, and we don't have to worry about it.
I don't disagree that now that you have to you have to present the disclosure. I wasn't saying that, but
I have no problem giving the disclosure or telling
Yeah.
it or putting it out, and I'll probably be coming back with other ones. So-
Okay.
So, especially if there's a financial one. But like I said, some of it is just, the job requires this is by statute, this is by bylaw, and this goes in and not even a thought about
Right.
an interest.
So Courtney, are you good with the two conditions I suggested, or?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, Maureen, or Linda, or both, assuming that the board is about to vote to make the required finding with the conditions I just set forth, could you work together to add those conditions? I think in the comment section on this, And I would be happy to send an email that, gives you the gist of what I just said. Is that okay?
So you'll provide the language
Yeah.
and we'll,
You should feel free to tweak it a little bit, but I'll provide the substance of it.
I'm
You-
not gonna
You're not going to
tweak.
tweak it, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm
Okay.
not gonna tweak.
I will,
Because
I
that,
will
it
provide
needs
the
to come from,
language.
yes.
Yeah, I'll provide the language, and for my colleagues, it'll be, I promise it'll be along the lines I just said. Is that acceptable?
Yep.
Okay. Do I have a motion then?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve and authorize the chair to sign a disclosure form as amended, submitted by the town clerk in accord with Mass General Laws 268A, Section 19.
Second.
And by as amended, you mean as amended with the conditions I specified?
That's correct.
Motion been made and seconded to approve and authorize the chair to sign a disclosure form submitted by the town clerk as amended with conditions specified in accordance with General Laws, Chapter 268A, Section 19. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Linda, along the same lines of what Courtney just said, I really appreciate how you got some advice from the Ethics Commission that probably sounded pretty wacky, but you got in here immediately with it, and I appreciate that.
And try to do the work that I'm supposed to do.
Right. Okay.
And like I said, you'll probably be seeing me again, because I'm sure there's another one.
We'll do that then.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Great,
That's
thank you.
okay.
I was happy to see you.
Good, always happy to see you.
All right. Thank you, Linda.
Yep.
So now, an appointment of a selectman to the Randall Library Building Committee. So Maureen and I had an exchange of emails about this. As you know, the Randall Library trustees created their own building committee. Then when I spoke to the chair of the Board of Trustees, and they intended to add, that they had a finance committee member on it. They intended to add a selectman and a member of the capital planning committee. My understanding is that they probably did that last night, but we haven't received anything from them. Maureen pointed out, the only posting we have says 7 members. They already have 7 members. We would have to make them special municipal employees. There were a few other problems, right? We weren't quite ready to do it. What were the other problems?
Originally, we weren't aware of it, and then when it came out, there was no terms, which
There were no
doesn't need
terms,
to be, but
but it's certainly
it
best
might make
practice.
sense that the term ends when that person's elected position
Right.
ends.
So I'd like to kick this item to the next meeting, and I think both the town administrator and I will send the message that they just have to communicate a little bit better on this kind of thing. You know,
On many things.
yeah, there's no problem with them creating their own building committee, but there's certain, not making it special municipal, I don't even know whether I'm assuming the existing members of the committee are not special municipal employees.
As
It's
long
the-
as,
um,
go
the-
ahead.
Well, I can explain. Is that all right?
Mhm.
So the committee itself has to be designated that, and the members, FinCom is special municipal,
Right.
capital planning, selectmen are by statute, so they have to be, the trustees are.
But this committee has been meeting. The Board of Selectmen, as far as I know, has not designated them special
Right.
municipal employees.
Right.
And that means, I'm not going to go into it all, but that the conflict of interest rules apply to those people a little bit differently than to the rest of us. We just need to get a little more communication with them. And I know I'm liaison, but they are acting a little bit too much like an island unto themselves. So we'll work on that. And I am willing to be on the building committee. I wasn't so sure about that 2 weeks ago.
Take one for the team.
Sure is.
Yeah, but I had coffee with Tim and
I was gonna push you.
yeah,
I was going to accept.
so when you were going to accept? Do you want to do it? No, seriously, do you want to do it?
I would perhaps be willing. But since we're not going to decide that tonight, we can talk about it later.
So it'll be up to you guys.
That's how my wife accepted my proposal.
It's a miracle she accepted. She lost a bet, that's why. Well, you'll have to appoint it at the next meeting. I won't be here. I'm willing, so do whatever you want to do.
Okay,
Okay. And you'll be chairing, so I
that'll be
wouldn't
complicated.
I wouldn't cry if,
You didn't
Process.
although I did have a conversation with Steve Jelinek at Peter McManus last night, and it was kind of like, are you doing it? Are you doing it? And we kind of agreed. Peter's not, but Steve and I kind of said, well, if you're doing it, I'll do it. So there is that, so.
Well,
Well, you bring a ton of it, you've been there from the beginning, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and what really persuaded me was Tim is clear, they're not aiming for spring 2020, so the schedule's going to be a little more manageable. I didn't want to do it in a year when we've got the town administrator selection going. So it sounds like it's going to be a little bit more manageable. I don't care. Whatever you decide on the 27th, but I would like to table it until then.
works for me.
I don't think I need a motion to table. No. Okay, so let's just do that. Bill, did you want to discuss, our next item is the process for replacing the police chief. You want to discuss that?
Yeah,
Introduce that?
distinction with a difference. So, for the same reason as it relates to the acting highway superintendent, in the past, a few other similar recommendations, I've posted, as of last week, the end of last week, for police chief, again, pursuant to certain interpretations of the charter. At the same time, the board created in 2014, at the recommendation of the town administrator and police chief, to the lieutenant's position in the police department, for the express purpose of that person being the presumptive successor to the police chief. This is normal, particularly in paramilitary police departments and the rest of it, because of the specialties involved. So that's what I'm recommending. You've received a written recommendation from the police chief for the same thing, which is to promote Lieutenant Rusty Marino, who is serving as lieutenant, to chief. So if you went along with at least considering that proposal, on the 28th, make the appointment if the board was inclined. If not, you can do anything else you'd like to. You're the appointing authority. But this process is what was intended expressly 5 years ago by some members of the board. Obviously, some of you weren't there with it. So just following that protocol, I strongly recommend that promotion to chief for all of the reasons that are in my activities report and what the chief's provided. My direct observation and involvements have been, I have a strong working knowledge of that position and the people that hold those positions. And so I say it with that experience and not simply because the person was promoted to lieutenant. It's what that person's done as lieutenant. So if there was an objection to it, then if you voiced it tonight, we're going a different direction. If there isn't, I've properly posted the position, and we'll have cleared the posting by the time the 28th rolls around. And if you wanted to, that's what I'm recommending.
Mr. Burke?
I just have a question, Mr. Administrator, and I apologize, and I'm not asking you to state the obvious again. I just want
Okay.
to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Are we appointing an interim police chief tonight?
No, you're
Are
not,
we-
all I'm asking for tonight is an agreement or not on this process.
Oh.
The appointment would come 2 weeks from tonight.
Ah.
The posting will have been satisfied. I'll be making that making that recommendation now, as is the police chief. The other thing that could occur on that evening is Chief Bosworth is retiring. He retires the next day, the 28th, as you know. It would be, for ceremonial purposes, could have the appointment of the lieutenant to chief to replace Chief Bosworth. Chief Bosworth could pin him with the chief's things. You actually vote to make the appointment that evening and celebrate Chief Bosworth's retirement, as we have been doing recently, we others, with, a certificate, having the families, in this case of both, Lieutenant Marino and the chief there. So I'm only asking that if you agree with this process, with that presumption, then the appointments would actually be made 2 weeks from today.
So basically, actually, I want to hear from Courtney if you got anything to say. So basically what Bill is saying is that we would not be doing a search for a new police chief because several years ago, we appointed a lieutenant with the understanding that the lieutenant would become the chief.
Understood.
Unless you wish to.
Unless we want to. Courtney, did you have something to say
Nope.
before Brian? Okay, Brian?
Look, I'm not trying to gum up the works or been flying the ointment, but I don't think I'm going to be here August 28th. And are you going to be here?
I'm not going to be here. I was going to say, that's my one disappointment. I had actually suggested this ceremony thing.
We won't have a quorum.
Well, Tom...
Don, it'll be, I think Don's still gonna be away, though I'm not sure. So we don't, if that's the case, we don't have a meeting for the 28th because we've got Tom,
Yeah.
his first meeting back, and Courtney.
So I didn't...
No, I am a
so, Brian, I
selectman in
didn't know
another
you
town,
were-
I could
That's,
always...
I'm throwing that out there. I get
You could
orders.
play one on TV here. It's
Yeah,
just
that's
for the-
right.
Okay,
I
so-
stayed at the hotel, whatever.
So,
Well, so that's,
so we're going to have to do it at the first meeting in September. It sounds to me...
I mean, there's nothing that prevents that from happening.
Here's the thing. I will know better next week if I'll be here.
So you're uncertain at this moment.
I'm 80% certain.
All right, so I would rather have, to tell you the truth, I'd rather have a full board here, as close to getting it as we could, for both reasons, get a retirement,
Yeah.
long-standing,
Can it wait until, I mean,
yeah,
Rusty will be, for all intents and purposes, acting chief?
yeah, without,
because-
he's the lieutenant, next he's second in command, and.
Right, because the position
In
will
that
be
business,
vacant.
it defaults to him.
If you can explain that, that would be great.
Because I'd like to, yeah, that's going to be September 10th. So it's going to be 2 weeks.
Okay. We'll
All right.
survive for 2 weeks.
So that would be good.
I'll try not to break the law.
Believe me, you guys, they've already got you all marked, so.
All right, so you're off the hook, maybe, potentially, for
All of that.
chairing the next meeting. All right, so I don't think we need, do we need a vote?
No.
Okay. So we have a process in mind for that. I assume then, not that night, but afterwards, we'll take up the question of replacing the lieutenant, or I guess whether to replace the lieutenant, and then if so, by whom,
Yes, that will be it.
which will be an interesting question. That will be,
The department is anxious to,
oh, right,
for all
okay.
this to happen, because it,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, we will.
Okay. Very good. I'm glad I'll be here for that ceremony. I was looking forward to it. Bill, I think you wanted to mention something very briefly about the role of the Town Administrative Search Committee.
Right, I had it in my activities report, which gives you a sense. At our last meeting, the board agreed, I think, I agreed to prepare a working group if the board wished me to for this, as I did for Kate Hogan's, which we still haven't heard anything yet on, but the money's in the check's in the mail. For the purpose of assisting the appointing authorities, multiple, you have the moderator who appoints 3 to this search committee, and the Board of Selectmen 2. And I think there was a general interest, and tell me if people agree, we've got a defined prescriptive process expressed in the charter that gives us 6 months front to back. No ands, ifs, or buts. And there's a lot that could take place in those 6 months, and from my perspective, I think the town benefits for better positioning itself to the degree it can before the clock starts ticking, which occurs the day I submit my resignation with a date on it. So we have 6 months. So the thinking there was, if a working group, and it could be a subcommittee, so it's, and this is the either or that we go through on many of these matters. I'm happy, because I'm not subject to the open meeting law, to have working groups, and I have many of them, and I've done some for the Board of Selectmen, I've done from the library trustees and for other groups and for myself, energy study group, whatever the hell it is. The purpose primarily there is because effectively, you can be very efficient in the use of the members of the working group and the work to be done, because you don't need votes taken, you don't need a quorum to meet, you can meet at the times. For example, it was convenient for us to meet at, 7 o'clock, because going to work later on into Boston, this is true of the working groups I have for many, they get to come in early, we have our discussions, you're off and out the door, we can meet at those times, and that's the most convenient time for this working group, which someone would say, if you posted a meeting at 7:30 in the morning, who would be there? And therefore, are you doing it because you don't want anybody there? None of which is true, but that's a legitimate concern. And you need a quorum of a subcommittee to do business. And if you don't get the quorum, and today, sometimes, especially with a smaller group, that's difficult. You missed a meeting, you've missed time. Then you have to take votes to assign people responsibilities and all of the rest of it. This isn't about transparency at all, because I'm happy to go with a subcommittee. This was about, I think as a practical matter, being honest on the deliverables by the charter and honoring what the charter intends to accomplish, that this would be we could provide technical assistance to the appointing authorities. We discussed, for example, there's going to be a number of people that are going to be seeking appointment to these groups, be my suspicion. It's an important one, it doesn't come around that frequently, and so you would have a lot of interest. So candidates who submit the letter of interest, what does the posting look like? What is it the appointing authorities want posted, because it has to be posted, as to the experience, qualifications, the variation of experiences, because we've only got 5 members. You want a wide cross-section of the interest and needs of the constituency groups in Stow. And so having that, and that thought process takes time. In the first meeting, we just began to identify what we thought we could bring to the appointing authorities to say, hey, look, in appointing the search group, the posting could look similar. In fact, I asked for each of the other 3 members to give me their own take on it, and I'm gonna cut and paste on it, and then when we met again, we're gonna look at it, and then we could come forward and say, this is our suggestion for you to consider for posting, which is the first step in the matter. So that's the kind of thing, technical assistance. And then, would the appointing authorities wish to have any help in whittling down? Let's say you get 30 applications, you're only getting 5. Again, time consuming and the rest of it. Could we help in identifying, defining by going through that first group, maybe make a first cut, give you a shorter list to go by, those type of things. And then when the search committee is actually in place and working, I think we can provide technical assistance to the search group when they're asking questions about deliverables and the rest of it. And one of the things we did talk about, because there has been someone who expressed interest in maybe getting an outside consultant to help in that process, as an example, and we discussed what we thought the charter would allow, so making sure we honestly didn't abrogate what was intended in the charter. And we couldn't give the entire thing to a consulting group, for example, but someone had suggested that. But what we could do, when it gets down to the seeking the references and doing the background checks on the shorter list, that'd be perfect for a consulting group who does this, because they know everybody out there. They know people in my positions, they know people they've worked for. That might be something that they could do, and we could talk about and say to the search committee, if you'd like, we could get that group in to help you. Those are the things that time isn't going to allow a full-depth due diligence in 6 months. Because if you divide it in 3, right? Search committee up and running in 30 or 60 days. You got 30 days to appoint it, but get up and running to know what the hell they're doing, 2 months. Then doing it 2 months. Getting the advertising together, for example, we could help. What would the word of the posting for that position be? Then getting it out there. How long should it be out there? Who should it come back to? 2 months. And then the board needs the appointing authority of the 3 finalists, 3 to 5, which is prescribed by charter. You want a couple months for that. You've got to do your own interviews. That's a lot to get done in 6 months. I just thought, and I think others agree, that we could be helpful so that that process is more efficient and effective. Having said that, I also understand it's a sensitive matter for folks. I don't want to be part of a process where there's people out there thinking that the working group, because it's not subject to the open meeting law, there are benefits that won't be conferred. If that's the thought by several people, serious people about an honest thing, then I say, I don't want this board to be subject to those kind of comments or concerns or fears. And as the appointing authority, I would simply say, and I don't want to put too much more time into it. If we make the call, let's go to a subcommittee then and just get on with it, because we don't, but we can't get that started to do anything other than what we're talking about under the charter, because it doesn't prescribe a subcommittee, for example, as it doesn't prescribe a working group. So what I'm saying is purely valid, legitimate, helpful, important things that a working group could do in a timely manner, and still we don't make any decisions. We go back to the appointing authorities and saying, here's what we're suggesting you to consider. You may or may not want to. So that's what we've started, but wanted to throw that out there.
So comments from my colleagues on this issue of working group versus subcommittee. Courtney, want to start with you? Anything?
I guess I agree with Bill that if it causes discomfort or alarm to have a working group, that it would be a good idea not to proceed that way. And yet I also get how it could be more nimble is the word that comes to mind, to have a group that's not subject to open meeting law. So those are my first thoughts.
Brian?
Full disclosure, I was appointed to the working group. I was asked if I wanted to be on it, and I said, geez, only if you want me. And I guess playing hard to get was the way to do, was the way to appeal. I've been in the working group, I've been in a working group meeting. I think it's perfectly fine for what we're trying to do, which is not select anyone, but to do the background, to get the process going, so that when this board and the town moderator select the search committee, they can be up and running. I agree the working group is a good idea, and I apologize and regret any flip comments I might have made at the previous meeting, if they caused anyone to believe that this was an unnecessary formation of a working group.
I can understand why people want transparency in this process. There's probably no more important question that the town is going to deal with in this decade. But the nimbleness you talked about is something that we have to keep in mind. I also conceptually, I don't have a problem with a working group doing what I think this group is going to do. What I think this group is going to do really are things that I would expect the town administrator to do or help out on. He's just choosing to talk to the moderator and a couple of selectmen when he's doing it. He's not making any decisions. So for example, I would expect the town administrator to draft a posting for the positions so that we can take a look at, comment on, and decide whether or not to post. I would expect, let's say we get 20 resumes for the 2 positions we can appoint to the screening committee. I expect to see all 20 resumes, but I would expect the town administrator to say, you know, if I were you, I'd start off with these 5. And I don't think the working group's going to do anything more than that. I would expect, once the screening committee is up and running and they have serious candidates and they need background checks, I would expect the town administrator to facilitate that. So it seems to be appropriate for a working group. It's just the town administrator doing what I would expect him to do, but talking to some people, consulting with them to make sure he doesn't misstep. I don't know. As far as I understand the concerns, but in this, I prefer to go with a working group. Okay, that seems to be a consensus of the 3 of us at least.
Well, and to tell you the truth, we can change course at,
Well, that's right.
and there's nothing irreversible here.
I am most concerned right now, and I still need to do it with this timeline. I need to draft the timeline. That's what my main concern is here, and anything that helps us meet the timeline. Although I think we got started in time, I know we got started in time, we have to keep certain deadlines in mind. It is scary the way the charter language, this event triggers that deadline, which triggers that deadline, and it's easy to make missteps here. And anyway, so I favor the nimbleness.
And just to be truthful with you, we sit with the door open. It's not like we're behind closed doors. So if somebody wanted to, it is an inconvenient time, but if anybody wanted to, they certainly could come, because there is nothing we're discussing that would be proprietary or something we wouldn't say in front of a group.
So
As we're saying it tonight. I mean,
I was going to say, and we're having this discussion in public right now, and I think if anybody's got 2 cents that they want to add, then send us an email,
Please.
you know, and email's better because it winds up in the correspondence, we can talk about it, we all see it. But that's, I think, where these 3 selectmen are tonight.
And we'll report regularly.
Right.
Right, so as you, at the
Yeah, I think that'll
meetings.
provide some transparency.
All right, are we ready for our next item?
Yep.
If you guys are.
So, do you want to do the town administrator's report, and then you can get out of here?
Oh, I won't turn down the offer. Actually, most of my activity report has already been discussed. But the last piece is another retirement. So there's a run.
Dropping like flies.
I should have went a little earlier, I'm thinking.
This isn't any indication.
You gotta replace them both. So Pam Landry, our treasurer collector, 32 years of experience. She started not as treasurer, but worked as assistant probably. I don't even, when she began, which is before I got here, I don't know what the title was. But she worked her way through. She's been treasurer now, boy, I'm gonna guess maybe 12 years, something along those lines. And she's looking to retire, and she's, October 4th would be her final date. So again, we've already started the process. I approved a posting today. It's gonna go to the MMA Beacon statewide. It's going to go, as most municipal departments today, fields of study, services, they have a job board, many are statewide, you know, planning departments have, everybody has them. So it will go out to that group. It will also go to the MMA Beacon, which comes out on the 28th. Our superintendent of streets will be in there as well. And the superintendent of streets is going to an APWA, which is again, and this one's a New England-wide for Public Works job site. It's going to go in the Beacon Villager for the purposes, that's a regional paper out of Maine now, I don't know, Christ is 15 towns, something like that. But for those who might be in the private construction business, we'd have that as well to go with, you know, in municipal. So we're off and running on those, and we'll stay at it.
Okay, is that it?
That's it for me.
Thank you.
Gotta get out of here before somebody else retires.
Thank you.
They're all beating me to the punch.
Yeah, let me write something.
You could view it as a compliment to you, that they want to hit the road, and they're nervous about the replacement. So-
In a selfish way, I would.
Yeah.
You know, but
So-
I would say this, I was speaking to one of the consultants from Mary's group out of the Collins Institute. They're doing employee interviews on the position classification questionnaires that were filled out, and that's routine. It's one of the, like the second step. And Nan, I only know if she was town administrator in Wayland, originally from Pennsylvania, been in the profession a long time, and she just recently retired from Wayland, and she's now working, doing this kind of work. And she came in to tell me, and I'd never met her. I knew she was in Wayland. She'd been there the last 5 years, but never really met her. And she said that compared even to where she was working, but other communities, that the workforce was positive, interested, reasonably content, not obviously perfectly, nobody is, and that it stuck out here more than other places. And I was happy to hear that, both because it's a reflection on the employees we have here and management, you know.
There's a level of commitment that you see from department heads and other employees, you see it in particular at town meeting. The preparation, the degree to which they care. And I don't think you always see in public employment. And I think that that is something that you should be proud of, and I think we should all be very proud of.
The institutional culture here is different.
Yeah.
And I've said that before, and I know it because I know many communities and my colleagues in other communities and what they do. The peaceful coexistence, for lack of a better term, between unions and management. There are many communities in this state where you're managing by grievance. I've got my colleagues calling me all the time, because the culture has been over decades where the unions and management have dug in, and there's almost nothing simple that can be done at the table. It is just the opposite here, and it took a long time for both sides to feel comfortable, but once we did, both sides told the lawyers they'd go home. We both said district representatives don't need to be here, and for the last probably 15 years, it's been no union representation other than the local folks, with me at the table representing management. We've never reached an impasse. We've never been to arbitration on union contract matters. I did get charged with unfair labor practice when the clerical union decertified itself. So, and that came from a person in Worcester who worked it. And when the state called me, I was not surprised, but I said, okay, I'll show up there and defend myself, but I'm bringing a busload of folks who on their own decided they wished to decertify. All the town agreed to do, with some intrepidation, is they asked me, could you tell us what you might do for us if we did? And I said, I'm going to answer that question. If this is what we get, this is what we get. But that's
All right.
good for them,
Take it as a compliment, and have a safe trip.
Have a good few days off.
Yes.
Indeed.
So the other, the remote participation is really just informational. I just wanted to give out this information. You all know, this board has in the distant past had selectmen who became snowbirds, go down to Florida for a few months. There was no remote participation option. Mr. Hawks may or may not do that this winter, and I thought it would be a good idea to just be informed about this. This was created in 2009. I think the last selectman who went to Florida for a long period on a regular basis was Jack Clayton, who was off the board by then. So this is the first time we might have a snowbird and this. I want to ask a favor of Mr. Burke in a moment, but it kind of speaks for itself. If a person participates remotely, we can put some conditions on that. We can say something like, it doesn't mean you got to take care of the kid, or in Tom's case, the grandkid, for an evening. It means you're out of town for unavoidable reasons. You don't count for purposes of a quorum, but you can ask questions, vote, otherwise participate. The only requirement is that you be able to be heard, so speakerphone. If you want to pay for and provide other stuff, I assume TVs, Skype, you can do that. If we were to adopt this, we cannot adopt it just for the Board of Selectmen. We would be adopting it for all boards and committees in town, but we could control what we pay for. So if we were paying, I don't think a speakerphone really costs anything, but if we were doing Skype, we could say they can do it, but they can't do Skype if we wanted to do that kind of thing. I think there's pros and there's cons. I've always been reluctant to do it. On this board, I think it makes more sense. We don't make a lot of credibility determinations. We don't have hearings where you're trying to decide one person, who's telling the truth among two conflicting viewpoints. That's where I think remote participation breaks down, because you've got to see the person. For the stuff we do, I don't see why you couldn't do remote participation. Just something to think about. The favor I wanted to ask Mr. Burke before we ever take this up again is if he could speak to LACAC and just ask them if we were to adopt this, what could they reasonably do? You know, Skype connection, I don't know what else, and would they pay for it? I'd just like to have that piece of information.
This is the chair looking for my response.
Yeah, sure.
Just like a few minutes ago, I was going to offer to do that, or I was willing to consider it. But no, I was going to offer to do that, and I just want to thank the chair for providing us with the materials that we've had in our packet, for considering the pros and cons very thoughtfully, and just presenting the issue. I think the only other thing that we need to look at this time is the technical feasibility and costs of doing the remote participation. I'm not saying remote participation is going to be necessary. It's just that we get a lot of important positions to be filled in the next few months, a lot of important meetings. So I think the chair is doing a great service to our board and our town by looking into this possibility at this time. I think that that pretty much is what was indicated.
Okay, so you'll talk to Lake Hack and see what they might be willing to do?
Okay. Yeah.
Just, you know,
Yes.
whatever, yeah, just whatever ideas they may have. And if their ideas are just, no, we don't have anything, then, okay, we know that. Linda?
So, I was thinking about, IT has a phone that is able to be hooked into the internet and with the computers. So it does require the use of a phone line, and that means that phone line is offline for that period of time. We've done this with our, some different online trainings where we've actually gone in, been remote doing that. So we have some equipment already.
Okay.
Maybe I should check with Ron Eld as well.
Ron and Lake Hack, yeah, just, see what they,
Actually, the phone line we lose is mine, so it's okay. It plugs in over there, and it's very
Okay.
clear and loud. Amazing.
okay. I mean, speakerphone seems good enough for me, but if somebody, I'm just thinking Jonathan may be watching this saying, oh, if I had a TV, I could set you up, we could be looking at Don on the wall. Which I don't know how I feel about that, but maybe it turns out it's easy to do. So, all right. So that's it, liaison reports, which I'm hoping will be mercifully brief, because,
I think we were mercifully brief last time.
okay, well then, go ahead.
No, after our clerk.
I got nothing.
Thank you. That was Mr. Burke.
Yes, one of the things I wanted to talk about at our last liaison report, and given the fact that it's only 8:20.
It's fine, please.
I do want to alert the board and my neighbors and friends that there are going to be some changes in FCC financing and funding of local access cable TVs. FCC has proposed a new report and order related to franchise agreements and fees, which, as you know, is how we fund our Stow TV services. And they seem to be headed in the direction of decreasing the funding of local cable access TV stations and their programming from the franchise fees. What I think they're really talking about only doing now is just using the franchise fees to pay for in-kind costs, which are the things that the cable TV companies, Comcast and I think Verizon, use to give us cable boxes and other things and upgrade our existing channels of communication. I'm not sure exactly what the technical term is, but the long and short of it, as I've alerted the board, is that in the long run, we're not going to be able to fund local cable access TV from franchise fees, because franchise fees are decreasing. The FCC is getting more stingy. They're being more vendor-friendly. And in the long run, we're not gonna have cable TV anymore. Everything's gonna, one of the things I've learned from LECAC service is that in the long run, everything's gonna go through the internet. It's all gonna be streamed.
It's going to be beamed directly into our heads.
Well, I'm not gonna be around when that happens.
Ditto.
But in the short-term long run, we're gonna see these things disappear. And what the LACAC is grappling with is how to keep providing such great community television services and access to community events on a different funding model to anticipate changes we expect to occur. Is that making sense?
It does. Could it also be, I don't want to belabor this, could it also be partially just reflecting a different political climate in Washington, one that, you know, where the FCC just doesn't believe quite as much in public access?
Yes, that's one explanation. On the other hand, when I go to these meetings, Bob Glorioso, who you mentioned in your chair's comments, he is talking about getting proactive. Bob is a very proactive guy, and he's already anticipating that the model just isn't sustainable because there won't be cable TV anymore. Right now, you can get all the channels you want by subscribing to Stow, to regular YouTube.
Right.
So, and you can't, there's no franchise fee that we can charge for YouTube.
Right.
So eventually, this money that we get regularly and has been previously adequate for our needs, that's going to go away at some point, regardless of who's in Washington.
Okay. Thank you.
That goes in correspondence.
I don't have anything. I talked about the library and the whole town administrator thing. And that's it. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, and we stand adjourned. So, Brian, will you let the office know as soon as you can about whether you're going to be around on Tuesday?
Well, you know, thinking about it, as I was talking about other stuff, I got a motion to continue this on, we're off, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I got a motion to continue this on Monday. If that's not for a 7-9 trial, I'm not gonna have time to come here on August 28th anyway.
Okay.
If it is granted, I'm going on
Linda,
a trip.